to get into the game, and boom, Prince Keliseth, they do it.
Bob, you said it. It's like Beetlejuice. With Halloween coming up, you say Prince Keliseth too many times, and he's just going to appear.
All right, and this is a matchup that is heavily contested for who it's favored for amongst the pro players. According to a lot of the stats, it's around 55% for the Hunter, but if you talk to pro players, they think it's much better for the Shutterwalk Shaman than the stats actually show. No, Muzzy was saying that he always wins this matchup from the Shutterwalk Shaman side and always loses it from the Hunter side, so he didn't really disagree with this. He didn't really agree with the stats in that situation. Sometimes that's really hard because we have so much access to stats now for Hearthstone, but you really have to pick and choose sometimes when the stats don't reflect the top level of play.
Yeah, that was a problem back in the days of like Patron Warrior, where it was by far just the strongest deck, and there was only, I would argue, there was probably about only 4 or 5 pilots of the deck who played it to optimal efficiency. But if you look on the stats, it's only like 30% win rate. You're like, man, this deck's tier 3, and it's like, no, it's not. This deck's insane. You're just bad at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that big joke when Raza Priest was always put in tier 3 for the meta snapshots, and that was a little bit of a crime because that deck was gross.
Speaking of gross, Glacial Shard is just a good card. I like it a lot. But he's holding it back. What's he saving this for? Is he saving it for a big old Devilsaur? Or is he, just doesn't want to overload the board too much?
I mean, a lot of times you want to use Glacial Shard for key turns, slowing things down. Right now, saving 2 HP isn't too relevant. It also doesn't fight on board particularly well, so you really want to hit something like, a Katharina, King Crush to slow down the game.
All right, so you have Cydonia's deck list in front of you. I want you to take a gander at the Shutterwalk list. Is there anything spicy going on? Is there any sort of Hemet Nestingwary, anything like that? We saw that a little bit earlier in the tournament. There's a lot of divisiveness on the card just because sometimes it gets you closer to your combo and sometimes it gets rid of your healing reigns and you're going to just die.
Nah, his list definitely seems just incredibly standard. He's only playing 1 Earthshock. He decided to go for that copy of Gluttonous Ooze, which I think makes a lot of sense with how frequently you're going to end up playing against Malagos Druid. And no Hemet. It was a card that people thought was absolutely nuts in Shutterwalk Shaman, but then just figured out as they played more and more games that blowing up the rest of your deck, leaves you to not have access to things like Healing Rain and the Lightning Storm when you really do want them.
All right. Looking at Feno's hand, I see a Flanking Strike, and one of the few targets in the game the Flanking Strike's going to kill, besides like a Serenite Chain Gang. I just want to add pressure. I like this play a lot.
Yeah, I mean, in any matchup, if you give Shutterwalk Shaman too much time, they do eventually get to their combos. So one of the things just Hunter wants to do is just put on pressure as fast as possible. And also the other way a Hunter can win is just finding that impossible board state where they cube a big minion like a Witchwood Grizzly and then just make it so, say, a Volcano doesn't actually clear the board.
Yeah, Witchwood Grizzly is just one of those cards where you wouldn't think it's like you're playing a combo deck. How is this possibly good? But adds a lot of health to the board. Volcano essentially just becomes a dead card. Lightning Storm isn't going to get the job done. They're going to have to waste Hex. But if they're using all their mana on Hex, you can just apply so much pressure with all the stuff they didn't develop. Rexar coming down on curve, killing that Spell Power Totem. That was very fortunate for Cydonia. Guaranteeing the kill on the 3/3s, and I think we're going to be building on a lot of beasts this game.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of times, once the Hunter's hand gets a little bit low from trying to curve out in the early game, you just always have that build a beast option to just absolutely fuel you in the late game.
Here's the decision point. Katharina on 7 mana, and I see a coin. Do we coin out the Katharina to try to apply as much pressure as possible, or do we save it for another turn to combo it with the play dead?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty okay with just doing it. This is the least likely turn for him to have Hex. Just doing that as, fast as possible decreases the chances of him having that answer. So coining out makes a lot of sense. And also, if it sticks, you do have the double activation, especially with drawing Cube now. Unless it's exactly double Hex, which we could see Cydonia has, Feno would be able to cube whichever one lived and go off with that. So it's actually pretty unfortunate for Feno that he had both Hexes on turn 8. And we'll see if Cydonia actually respects the Witchwood Grizzly enough to use both the Hexes here, because you definitely have to always Hex this Katharina, because you know that there's just a big beast coming out of that every time.
I mean, you got to respect the Grizzly. And the Katharina, look, I don't know what Cydonia is currently running as far as the beast package. Is he on Team Savannah High Main or Team Devilsaur?
Check it out. A lot of people have been going for that Devil Sword just to add more damage to the game. It's actually, it's Feno playing the Hunter. You have the deck list for that.
Oh, true. He's on Team Savannah High Main.
Okay, gotcha.
My bad, bub.
It's all right. So we did see Cydonia wisely going for that double hex, and Feno was really hoping for a target to stick for that cube. But now you always have that Rexar hero power, and just that's one of the strengths of the deck. Once you make a big beast that actually sticks, you could just go in on that with the cube.
What's really nice about the Build-A-Beast as well, interacting with the Carnivorous Cube, is that zombies are a unique minion, so that can't be silenced.
Fledgling with charge is pretty good, man. Getting that adapt instantly. We'll see if he could get
We
that
get
Wind
stealth,
Fury.
it's so good. Plus 3 health, still pretty good. Adds a lot of health, so we're not quite outside Volcano range, but pretty close. And charge Fledgling, if that were to get like something like stealth, Carnivorous Cube, Play Dead, make 2 more charge 4/4 Vicious Fledgling.
Yeah.
That's just good.
And, something that might happen here, if Cydonia doesn't want to go for this Volcano, he might rely on just the Earth Shock to maybe take care of this Fledgling. But the downside of that could be that Feno going for that cube, the ones that pop out of it are not going to be silenced, and they will have the charge and the ability to adapt.
So we can. There's the Carnivorous Cube. We can Terror Scale Stalker and Play Dead. The problem is these 2 frogs are taking up board space. I don't know if he's going to have enough room.
So for Feno, does he decide that this minion is big enough to start going in on the cube? And he says, yeah, it's go time. He's going to be able to connect 3 Fledglings if he wants to.
No, he can do 4. He can Hunter's Mark the Serenite Chain Gang and bring it down with the Candle Shot.
He doesn't have the mana to do that in both activations.
No, he doesn't it doesn't necessarily have to be both activations. He doesn't even have the room for all the activations.
Yeah, you're right. So then he might go for that Hunter's Mark to push both of these towards face. Because you don't have that many targets for Hunter's Mark against Shutterwalk Shaman. So just using it to push damage and add more pressure to the board, especially now that it's going to be the case that Volcano on its own does not clear the board. He would need the Lightning Storm and that to try and deal with the board.
Yeah, these taunts are kind of just a double-edged sword for Cydonia, because on one hand, it is taking up space on Feno's side of the board, so we can't get the full max value out of this cube. But at the same time, it is protecting the health on board, and so Cydonia is going to struggle to bring down the total health total. And so even if he trades into the 0/1 frogs, that's only lowering the total health by 2.
Man, that's pretty unfortunate for Feno. He attacked 3 times with Fledgling over the course of these 2 turns, and he could not find a single Wind Fury option. And Cydonia actually has a pretty good answer, having the Earthshock for this cube, having the Lightning Storm and the Volcano. He has a full board clear if he wants it. But it's sometimes, you know, hard to ask yourself, can you afford to use all these resources? It also has the option to, say, go for this Mind Control tech, where you don't necessarily have to clear the board if you steal something valuable like this cube.
If he gets a Fledgling, it's going to have charge. The worst.
That is the second to worst. You know, obviously the Frog would have felt pretty bad too. But
at least
now,
the Frog blocks damage.
Yeah. Now that Cydonia has went for this play, he's removed the option to go for that full board clear. So he took a big risk and definitely did not pay off for him here.
I think if he goes for a Lightning Storm Earthshock, can potentially take out one of the Fledglings. Zola, run it back? He's like, let's go again.
And Feno is a little bit scared. And he took the 2 worst minions. Oh, man.
That's unfortunate.
And you have to think, was this an unnecessary risk? We obviously would not be asking this question if things had worked out for Cydonia, if he stole the cube, if he stole the 4/7 Fledgling. But you got to wonder, he did have access to try and clear the board, and now it's going to be the case where he could just be dead this turn.
There are multiple ways to go about this. Cydonia correctly Earthshocks the cube to play around another Death Rattle activator, which would be essentially a guaranteed lethal.
Okay.
But if he gets basically anything that can deal with this frog,
he just needs 1 Wind Fury
I believe he just got a charge. Or a rush.
Yeah, it's a rush. So then he could push all these minions to face. So as long as he gets 1 Wind Fury, that's going to be game. Which, you know, now it's 5 tries total. And only 1 left, you know. The adaptations do not have memory. It's not any more likely after not seeing it. But there it is. It took him 5 tries, but he was able to get it. And that game just ended. And then, yeah, as I said, should have Cydonia went for a little bit more defensive play. Obviously, with the line that he took, he left himself that chance to get very unfortunate. And that is just going to end up with Feno taking that game 1.
That really is unfortunate, too, for Cydonia, just because he had the healing reins in hand, and he had the opportunities to play them, but it's so hard to, juggle healing, board control, clearing your opponent's board, hexing, priority minions. And so after that double hex turn, I thought Cydonia was going to just run away with it, but Feno was able to apply so much pressure with just all the beasts.
Did you see Cydonia's face right there? That was the face of a man who absolutely hates mind control tech right now. That card did him absolutely no favors, and that's the other face as well.
He's going through the stage. He's going through the stages of grief right now. First it was anger, now it's just grief. Yep.
Oh man, you got to make sure that you can keep a clear head and try and bounce back.
Now he's at acceptance.
We're moving on. That's Hearthstone.
Right. That was the fastest series of just going through the stages of grief I've ever seen in my life. Fenomeno, just being Fenomeno. He's been around the block enough times to know that not to get too excited over going up 1-0. He's still got 2 more games to win.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You can't get too excited when you do have, a little bit of lucky situations like that because, who knows next game. Maybe your hand could just be all 8 mana cards.
Maybe you steal your opponent's frog.
But we're going to see a Druid mirror. It's going to be Token Druid for Feno and Malagos Druid for Cydonia. And this matchup pretty heavily favors the Malagos Druid. It's very hard for the Token Druid to sometimes push through enough damage once a Spreading Plague does come out from the Malagos.
So if everyone recalls back to the DreamHack Austin days when Token Druid kind of made its debut, there was a lot of contention in the pro community over what the correct way to do the matchup was, because for a lot of people, it was the first time they've ever played the matchup. And Token Druid has the Whispering Wood Soul of the Forest combo, but your opponent, has Spreading Plague. And so is the correct line of play to play stuff and hope he doesn't have it, or to just never play anything?
One of the lines that I think is very realistic is if you just play Whispering Woods, if you don't pair it with the Soul of the Forest, if they don't have swipe 2 answer to that, if they go for a Spreading Plague of their own, sometimes you could trade in all those 1/1 tokens, and if you get a counter Spreading Plague, yours is always going to be better because you actually could capitalize on the 1/5 minions with things like Power of the Wild and Soul of the Forest yourself. So that's a way to try and make a board sticky enough for them not to be able to deal with it.
Looking at the hand textures right now, Cydonia kind of has everything he could want. He's got the Twig that he can start activating on. He's got Cycle with the Ferocious Howl and Branching Pass. Yeah, Feno has Nourish, though. That's also pretty good.
Token Druid is not a deck that plays Weapon Destruction almost ever, so just having this Twig means that at some point Cydonia is going to have a absolutely crazy turn, and if he's not under the pressure to have that 20 mana turn in the early game, he could just wait to combo it with Malagos in the late game. You see sometimes, you have to use that Twig early game against aggro decks to get back on board. But I have to imagine that it's not going to be in the case here.
That just goes to show how tight all the Druid lists are in terms of their deck building. Because if you want to just build a new Druid archetype, like before you even think about like things you're going to be you're already at like 20 or 30 cards. And that's just like you, like just instinctually clicking on the good stuff.
Druid cards are just so strong, man. It really is the case that, any Druid deck you're playing, just if it has that foundation of the ramp, the wild, the Spreading Plague, and the UI, you could put pretty bad cards in there and still pick up a lot of wins.
Yeah, we were talking about that a little earlier when we were casting the Mechathune Druid. It's just like I was looking at it, I was like, this is Mechathune Druid? It's like, yeah, it's 28 Mali Druid cards. And then Mechathune Druid with a Innervate Naturalize. And I'm just like, oh, Druid's real good. If you can just have an alternate win condition with just like the same 28 cards as every other Druid deck.
If only you could play every single win condition. Token, Mali, Togwaggle, Mechathune, Druid.
I'm pretty sure I've seen that.
That doesn't sound great.
It wasn't. But it existed. Malagos already in the opening hand. Forbiddeness Floop as well. 3 charges left on the Twig. Cydonia's getting this combo done very quickly.
Yeah, a lot of times as Token Druid, you have to have a very aggressive start with Teachers and the Power of the Wilds to try and make these pretty meaty boards that a Spreading Plague doesn't just blow you out if you're looking to win. But Feno had the ramp, but not really such an aggressive start. He also doesn't have the UI just yet, so it's going to give Cydonia a lot of time to just chill out, cycle through this deck. We could see that he does have the UI himself.
A meaty board, Bob?
Yeah, you don't want your board to, be too weak to the 1/5s. If they're able to actually trade into them and stay alive, it's going to make your chances to win that much better.
Come on, Bob, you're a professional now. We don't say meaty, we say thick.
Of course.
That is the proper usage of the word.
But I feel like thick almost always refers to the health of a minion. Or meaty can, refer to the attack as well.
Fair. Fair. I'll take that.
Why would you agree with that? I don't even agree with myself.
You just lost track of that sentence halfway through, and you're like, oh, I hope it makes sense by the end of it. And it kind of did.
But Cydonia, it still has not found that ramp, but it's just not really a big deal. Obviously, Feno doesn't have any ways to go wide on the board just yet, so he doesn't need that spreading plague or ramp just right now. Feno, look at his turn. It's just going to be punch face, and that's it. And I feel like if you're Cydonia, you probably have to assume that your opponent has UI, because if they have such weak turns like this in a row, then it's very likely that the UI is going to be there. So what Cydonia could do is potentially use this coin to get at the Lich King to stop a UI turn from happening. Anytime you could delay it by a turn is going to be very huge.
But at the same time, I see 2 charges left on the Twig. I see myself at 7 mana, and I see a coin in Malagos. I kind of want to set up the Twig proc next turn with a coin Malagos into a Forbiddeness Floop swipe. Apply a lot of pressure and prevent force Feno to kind of be retroactive and not be able to be proactive in its game plan. We can push a lot of damage with that. We don't have any Moonfires yet, but with the swipe alone, that's going to be 14 damage. And you're going to have what you would describe as a very meaty board.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the case where, so say if Feno does play an ultimate position in the next turn, Cydonia is going to have that Twig on 1 to go off with the Malagos that Token Druid really doesn't have an answer for. So I do like that line of holding off with the Lich King, even though it would have made the UI awkward. Being able to go off with this Malagos and the spells does seem a lot better in this situation.
Yeah, I'm looking, because of how tight the board currently is, or the deck list is for Feno and Token Druid, no naturalizes in the list. He's going to have to brute force through the Malagos. And without a board, that's going to be really hard to do.
Oh man, this is going to be absolutely nuts. Cydonia can play the Malagos, play the flooped Malagos, and then swipe for so much damage, and then it's so hard for Feno to actually really deal with both Malagoses in that spot. So then if one of them sticks, he just has access to something like a 10 damage UI into the Moonfires. Things are going to get really rough for Feno.
There's one of them right now. That's 25 damage already. If he gets the second Moonfire, that's just lethal.
Yeah.
There's the essence of magic himself. Malagos, number 2 coming out. Swipe, going straight to the dome.
He's almost just dead just from these 2 spells.
Playing Malagos on curve is just such a good feeling, especially with the Twig activation after. 10 health left for Feno.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the strength of Malagos Druid. They could have these crazy games where they have the Twig and they just do absolutely disgusting things to you. And that's just going to be it for Feno. There's absolutely nothing he can do to live on board here. He's going to try and just make the 1/1s do a swipe armor up, but it is not going to be enough.
Yeah, there is a world where sometimes Cydonia does not have any sort of spells that can go face, and he's going to be 5 damage short. But as we can see, that is not the case. He has a smorgasbord of options. Swipe, he can UI. He's going with a swipe.
And that was one of the most aggressive Druid games I've ever seen. It just ended so quick. We had a couple turns of that, they were just sitting there doing nothing, and then boom, just like that, Twig was popped, Malagos just killed him.
I believe when I was casting with Dan yesterday, he classified an aggro deck as any deck that can finish a game before like turn 12.
I think that was before
Malagos,
turn 12, with the ramp. Obviously, we saw him at 10 mana. That was only because of the Twig. He started that turn with 8 and coined it out. So
is Malagos Druid an aggro deck now?
Everything's an aggro deck. This is what you said yesterday, and I heavily disagreed.
No, everything's a control deck, Bob. That's what I said.
Of course.
You either control the board or you control your life, your opponent's life from 30 to 0.
But we see it evening it out a little bit there. Cydonia having that first game. Very unfortunate mind control text. Well, the Hearthstone gods, they felt a little bit bad. They gave him a Twig and a Malagos, and it worked for him there. Going to tie up the series 1-1.
See, Cydonia a little more chipper this time around. His eyes straight ahead, looking to the future, and another Prince Keleseth.
I don't even want to say it. It's just always there. Am I encouraging the Prince Keleseth to show up every single game?
It's a little puppy dog. It's like, kind of like, come here, buddy. Come here, Prince.
And he does have the Chain Gang in hand. I wonder, do you ever throw it back so then it gets the Prince Keleseth buff?
No.
He agreed.
I mean, it's just a good card on its own, and, having it be a 3/4 is icing on the cake, but at the same time, you need to get the battle cry out there because this is just a hard matchup overall, just because it's really hard to utilize your healing, because if you leave your opponent with a board, you kind of just go from 30 to nothing real quickly. So it's hard to use healing rain effectively. And at the same time, it's also hard to use your board clears effectively because you have the Whispering Wood Soul the Forest combo. You have to use 2 board clears in order to get through that. And you only have a very finite amount of board clears.
Yeah, there's a matchup that in previous metas was very Token Druid favored, just because they would just run the Shutterwalk Shaman out of the board clears. But with the inclusion of the Electra Storm Surge, it becomes a lot closer. Being able to go Electra into a Lightning Storm to clear that board of Wisps and the Soul plays a very big part. And then the Shutterwalk Shaman trying to fatigue the Token Druid.
All right, Oaken Summons, the 1-of copy finally getting used. Hex coming down immediately. Token Druid, not really a deck that has a lot of targets for that Hex, so Violet Teacher's a good one as any.
Yeah, and Feno is going to ramp. He probably would have went through the ramp even if he didn't find that UI off the top, just because he had that branching pass for the card draw.
But he did find it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to be good. Arcane Tyrant coming down. He might use the branching pass for draw anyway, just because he doesn't really have a play over the next 2 turns until that UI. So unless he picks up like something like a Wild Growth or maybe even the second Nourish, looks like he's going to have a couple of turns of just kind of not doing a whole lot.
And speed is definitely the name of the game for the Token Druid. You want to push out your boards as fast as possible, because that's just, going to leave your opponent with the least chance to have every single board clear. If you give them time, they're going to draw more through the deck, cycle more through it to then try and fatigue you.
Grumble picked up off the top for Cydonia. This is that part of the game where you think, I want to bounce these Serenites, but at the same time, your hand's getting a little bit cluttered. You don't want to accidentally mill anything in the following turn. And at this point, you kind of have board control in a sense, just because your Token Druid opponent doesn't have anything.
Yeah, Feno could have potentially held that branching pass for something like the damage later in the game, but a lot of times 2 Savage Roars is going to be enough, and he really wanted to find Wild Growth to get this UI next turn, and he did get it. So huge pickup there for him, and is just going to be able to make all these boards a turn sooner.
All right, now if I'm Cydonia, and I'm a good Canadian Hearthstone player, I'm seeing a handful of a lot of things. I'm going to get confused really quickly, but I got Grumble. I think I need to finish this combo as quickly as possible, and that's an 8/8 too. I get another Serenite to hopefully fight for board. I'm going to coin it out. It's going to set back the Hagatha another turn if he needs it, but UI is probably on his mind. He wants to go as wide as possible.
Yeah, I mean, this 8/8 is such a great tool to deal with this UI token. Also, if Arcane Tyrants come out for free, being able to have this 8/8 to not commit, say, a Volcano to this board is exactly what Cydonia wants in this situation.
UI coming down. There's the second Violet Teacher. Second Soul of the Forest. Whispering Woods finally picked up. That's definitely the card he was looking for. Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest is going to utilize force Cydonia to use the Electra Lightning Storm, but after that, not looking like a whole lot.
Yeah, we see a lot of AoEs in the hand, but it's also the case that only 2 options are there to deal with a Whispering Wood Soul of the Forest board. You could either go for Lightning Storm, Volcano, or the Electra Lightning Storm, but once he does one of those, he's not going to really have access to that second board clear if Feno runs it back with a second Whispering Wood Soul of the Forest.
Or even just a Violet Teacher pop off as well. Unfortunately, Hagatha is a very expensive card, and it only has the 1 AoE.
And we see that he is now have both copies, so this is the exact type of hand that you want. Having the follow-up with double Savage Roar will always kill your opponent if this board sticks. And we're going to see Cydonia going to go for one of the 2 options. I have to imagine that Electra Lightning Storm is going to line up a little bit better than, say, going for that Volcano here. It also pushes that damage to the face, but now he's not going to have that great of an option to go for the clear on the second one. He has Earthshock and maybe Volcano after taking a couple of trades with the minions. Having the board is very, very helpful in this situation.
Does Lightning Storm overload twice?
Yes, it does.
Ooh, that's rough. That's going to be even 4 less mana to work with this turn. And he's going to need every mana he can get. Agatha is no longer an option. Volcano is just barely playable, but if he goes for another Whispering Woods combo, that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, I think it might be the case that he has to go for something like Mind Control Tech and this Earthshock to try and clear enough minions on the board. He really is hoping for another Earth Shock or maybe even Lightning Storm off the top to try and survive this play coming out from Feno here.
This is definitely the point in the game where the proponents of the Wild Pyromancer list are definitely in the right. Players like Rage, who put in countless hours into the Shudderwalk Shaman, is very adamant about Wild Pyromancer and Earth Shocks and Zaps just to get as many board clears as possible.
So,
But Prince Galitheth, pretty good too.
Yeah, you could actually just leave him with 4 Wisps here, and I don't think that 4 Wisps is going to be enough with the double Savage Roar in hand, since he could go Mind Control Tech, Earth Shock one of them, and then take the trades on board. I think that's got to be the play, and then he's going to leave 4 Wisps, so Savage Roar is going to do 10 damage each. That's 24, and yeah, I think that's 28 exactly. Is my math awful?
Probably, but I'll believe you this time, Bob.
All right, 4 minions on the board. Each Savage Roar is dealing 10, 4 from the minions, 4 from the swipe.
Seems good to me.
Yeah, I think that's going to be exact lethal for Feno, unless, as I said, I'm up here for a reason. It's to make the players look good when I mess up the math. We saw yesterday, I thought, board control had lethal in many ways. Turns out he only had 1. What I said was just wrong, and I made him look good. That's the only reason why I would get it wrong, of course.
Bob and Bad Math. Name a more iconic duo.
I can't.
Prince Galitheth on 2.
And yeah, that's just the the power of the token druid here, and the importance of getting that wild growth when he drew for it with the branching pass, knowing that this double Savage Roar would likely be enough. Being able to push out that ultimate infestation a turn earlier really paid off for Feno here, because if he just gave Cydonia an extra turn, he probably would not have been overloaded, and then would have had access to that Volcano or Hagatha to get more of a board clear than he was hoping for. So as I said, speed was the name of the game in that matchup, and Feno was able to go fast enough.
Here's another thing that kind of came up that we talked about a little bit earlier, is that Healing Rain. He used it to heal up his Grumble just to apply enough pressure to hopefully force Feno to be a little more reactive rather than proactive. Because you saw there, Cydonia just died from 28. Healing Rain was not going to be effective there.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost always the case that Token Druid just kills you from 30, so the healing, not the best. And now it's going to be the case where Cydonia is going to have to win 2 games in a row. And what exactly does Feno have left?
I believe it is the Odd Paladin.
Ooh, the Odd Paladin. It's a pretty reasonable deck to try and beat twice. People are a little bit iffy about Odd Paladin. Obviously, you see some of the pro players opted for it just because of the popularity of Death Rattle Hunter. But even in that matchup, it actually hasn't seemed too hot. So for sure, Feno has 1 favorable left. I'm not exactly sure how this Odd Paladin versus Shudderwalk Shaman matchup plays out. I remember in a previous meta, Odd Paladin used to do pretty well in it, but I'm pretty sure now that they have things like Electra and a little bit more resource to deal with aggro, that it's pretty okay for the Shudderwalk Shaman.
Yeah, like I said before, depending on the list that the Shudderwalk has, it can change the matchup pretty drastically. So if he were to run, say, Wild Pyromancer, which he's not, it has a lot more game against the Odd Paladin. But the Odd Paladin has the advantage of having so many buff cards in hand that rely on very minimal amounts of board. And so there are situations where you will only have, say, 5 Silverhand Recruits on the board. And you're like, it's 5 damage. That's nothing. Next thing you know, he plays Level Up in a Raid Leader and he's pushing 20. So it's like, what just happened? We also get to see the new hero for the Paladin.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
The man, the myth, the legend, the Annoyatron.
I am too frightened to play against this thing.
You just concede immediately when you queue into it. You're just like, I'm not going to deal with it. Don't say hello to me, whatever you do.
Did you know that Shudderwalk Shaman always has Volcano on 5? Always. They never not have it. It's in the hand. It's ready to go.
Feno's going to do a lot of stuff before turn 5, though. Now he has Lightning Storm, too. Like I said, he's going to have to utilize his resources very carefully, because Feno can have just a very minimal board. And Cydonia may have to use a board clear to prevent taking an excess amount of damage, but Feno has the button, and that's going to make 2 dudes a turn, and eventually that's just going to overrun Cydonia.
Yeah, that's just what Odd Paladin does best, is just make board after board, trying to just make it so you don't have enough resources to just jam AoE spell after AoE spell.
Fortunately for Feno, while he does have one of the best hero powers in the game next to, say, the Odd Rogue, not a whole lot of plays after. The 3-drop Void Ripper isn't doing anything substantial anytime soon. He may play it just to kill a Manatide Totem, but the Righteous Protector not going to be applying a whole lot of pressure, and Vine Cleaver and Baku are a ways away from getting played.
And Cydonia just realized in this situation he's not under that much pressure. The only real punish for not playing a Lightning Storm there would be something like a Divine Shield Maw, which obviously would blow you out, but a lot of times that card is just so good that you can't play around it. But getting this Lightning Storm off of the far side, he's just going to opt to play it. He had the option to just play Lightning Storm, but I guess he was hoping for the upside of what that far side could have potentially had in it.
And that just goes back to what I was saying is, if you look at that board, it wasn't really threatening. It's what you don't know about your opponent's hand that makes it threatening. So you Divine Shield Maul, +1 attack Maul, Fungalmancer in the next turn. And so it's just really hard to play. Now he's overloaded for 2. He used one of his removals, and Feno essentially just created the exact same board state that there was a turn ago.
Yeah, and Cydonia went for the hero power there. It did have 2 pretty okay options with the Taunt Totem and the 1/1, but if he got Healing Totem, it would have been very dead on the board. And Spell Power Totem honestly is not doing a lot in this situation. Unless a level came out, you don't really need that 3 damage Lightning Storm. Especially if he did have a level up, then he would have traded anyway into it.
Now, is Feno going to push this 3 damage, or never mind? He's going to ask a question. Maybe he would have thought about it for a sec for suspense, but no, he's going face.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. A lot of times against Shudderwock Shaman, you almost never respect these totems, and stealing the best one makes Lightning Storm clear the board, and it's also the case where now an unidentified Mult will no longer clear this minion for Feno.
You recall 2 games ago, Cydonia stole the 2 worst minions from Feno, and now this time steals the best one. So, you win some, you lose some, and this time he definitely won.
There is too many mind control techs in this metagame, man. Making more than 4 minions, you just know what's going to happen. They're going to steal something, and then sometimes they steal the best one.
Imagining a world where, like, Crip gets done with Arena, and he's like, I'm done. Going over to Constructed. I'm sick of MC Tech. And he comes here, and he's just, oh, God, there's even more of them.
Crip has nowhere to run.
Like, they're going to find you.
You cannot escape the mind control tech in Hearthstone right now. It's everywhere.
Donia, a little bit of a clustered hand. Alkali to Pain can draw cards, and it's very good about dealing with these 1/1 recruits. We have the Sandbiter on the left to try to find stuff like Grumble and the Glacial Shards, which are very good against Odd Paladin, especially going into turn 7 with the Vine Cleaver coming up in a sec. Going with the Alkali to Pain, though, looks like. With a Hero Power, trade into 2 1/1s. He's got to know turn 7's coming up. Your Feno has yet to play that much. He even played a Void Ripper, so his hand doesn't really have that many playables. And so going into turn 7, I think you can make a solid read that he probably has a Vine Cleaver.
Yeah, and this also forces Feno in a lot of situations to sink this Vine Cleaver into the Acolyte of Pain rather than going face.
Or the other way.
Yeah, you could also just send the
Void
minion
Ripper.
in. Yep.
Yeah, so you keep the minion.
But it still essentially heals him for 3, since he has to stop that card draw from going off.
All right, there's the Electra. Not really any spells to pair it with. The Volcano does not need to be doubled at all. Sandbinder on the left has a 66% chance of getting a Glacial Shard.
Yeah, I think Cydonia is trying to find spots where he doesn't get too blown out by level up, so he's just going to continue to just throw the minions on board, make sure that even if Feno did have that card, that he could answer it with a Volcano of his own.
This is the part of the game where Odd Paladin can apply a lot of pressure very quickly. Cydonia's at 26, though. Leroy Jenkins is a far ways away. Do we just get this raid leader down and try to push as much damage as possible? Your opponent looks like you're fighting for board, so maybe they're struggling a little bit more on the board clear side of things. 2 Life Streakers came down. I think you just got to go for it.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of holding the raid leader just because this is a board that it doesn't really feel that great to AoE, knowing that he always has that Swing of the Vine Cleaver and a Hero Power to just make 4 minions without even trying. So when you make a board like this, they don't ever want to AoE it. And then if it does stick, a raid leader and a Leroy deal a lot of damage.
Rumble, a very interesting pickup for multiple reasons. So one, the Sandbinder is guaranteed to get a Glacial Shard now, which is very good information to have. The other thing is that we can bounce these Life Drinkers and heal for another 6 damage. So we can value trade.
Yeah, I'm all for this. Being able to then play the Mind Control tech again in both Life Drinkers, healing 6 and stealing a minion, that's a pretty good play to go for, considering you did not want to use this AoE. And you just get to continue to apply pressure. And this is just dealing a lot of damage. Look at these Life Drinkers just go in.
Yeah, these have dealt 12 collectively after he plays them. But part of the thing he has to keep in mind is by doing this play over the Volcano is he leaves a lot of stuff on the board. So this raid leader is going to be pushing 5. It's 9, 12, 16. Leroy and raid leader is just one off. Or is it exact?
Math is hard, Will.
That's
So
5, 9,
raid
12,
leader,
16, 23. No, that's exact lethal.
Raid leader is 8. Leroy is 6. There's
Raid leader's 5.
Well, I was counting raid leader's buff plus its 2 attack.
Well, it can't attack this turn.
Oh, true.
It doesn't have
That's
charge.
a good point.
Yeah,
Anyways,
this is exact
why
lethal.
even try and do the math when Feno's doing it for us? That's why he's on the stage.
I
That's
did it
why
first.
we're up here. Will
I got
Scarlet
it.
is pretending
what are you
that
talking about? I got it exact. I did math, Bob. Don't take this away
Trust
from
me,
me.
Twitch chat didn't hear it. Anyways, they were spamming lethal no matter what. You already know it, even if there wasn't lethal.
Yeah.
But in that case, there obviously was. Feno, he's not the type of player to do any math wrong there. He's obviously going to see the lethal, and props to both him.
Right about now.